our sunglasses on for this one. Sure. My name's Aaron. Mike and I have known each other for a dozen years or more, and I've known lots of stories about Mike throughout the years. We've been really close, and I just thought that I would tell you guys a little bit of Mike's history, really, about before he came to the gorge, and maybe include a few stories about that, and just kind of lead us up until present day here. I met Mike when he trained as a raft guide, actually, in Clear Creek, Colorado, or in ABA on Clear Creek in Colorado. And I've always really enjoyed telling people that at the time when Mike trained as a raft guide, he would have been the most clean-cut guy at this whole place. He had the best-looking girlfriend of any of over 25 raft guides. And it wouldn't surprise you that he didn't have a car at the time, but that she would come from Denver to drop him off and pick him up every single day. The things that we knew about Mike, I would like to hear more from people that knew Mike before this time, but that I knew of him before when he showed up to be a raft guide was that Mike was a college-educated human. He had a degree in sports management, and he traveled the world. He worked for a travel agency of some sort that I would love to hear more about, and I have to refer to my notes here a little bit, but let me get this ready. But yeah, he had been a ski bum in a few different places, like Tahoe, or popular places to ski, and I think actually what almost pushed him towards being a raft guide was that Mike had been a shoe salesman in Denver the year before he decided that he needed to become a raft guide. And I really feel like those were somewhat of the dark ages of Mike's life, his winter as a shoe salesman in Denver. But we worked together there on Clear Creek for 3 years, and I think Mike worked there a season after I left. And of course, there are plenty of stories in the first 3 years of anybody's experience of jumping into the whitewater community and kind of finding yourselves in the way that we all have and the way that Mike did. Let's just to name a few. There was a time when I believe Mike went to jail at Red Rocks Amphitheater at a slightly stupid show that they had all gotten backseat tickets to, and had realized at the end of the show that Mike wasn't around, and in order for everybody to get on the bus and leave, that there was going to be a mission to get Mike out of Red Rocks jail. Let's see. Or else maybe also, like Gavin mentioned, that how Mike got all of his nicknames, all right? He was a man of nicknames, and we also had conversations about how he had lived his life by a nickname throughout time, which he did for our entire friendship, like out to lunch that we all know him by, or get your shit together, or I like to call him Magic Mike at times, and I thought that I was the one that actually came up with that till he told me that other people had called him that before me. One that hasn't been mentioned was Mikey Free Heels, because of course Mike liked to teleski, and so they called him Mikey Free Heels, and he did indeed also tell me that his favorite nickname was Mikey Touchy Feely. So, yeah, but I also remember him telling me that his favorite way to be addressed was just as Mikey, and I think that was what he had gone by times throughout his childhood. He really liked that. Like I say, Mike, he stayed there for another year after I did, and I moved further out west, and then I think Mikey went back to the East Coast, and he worked on vegetable farms, and which is something that he always really loved. As much as he loved whitewater, he enjoyed just working on the farm and living that really simple lifestyle of this really simple human that we all know as the minimalist that Mike was. And he even worked at one farm with all like horse-drawn equipment that I don't think they had anything mechanized or maybe motorized on the whole place. And at one point, I remember whenever I was trying to sort of convince Mike to come up to the gorge here, and he was thinking about going back to the East Coast to do what he had done before, he said, you know, Aaron, there's not much I love more than just staring at a horse's ass all day long. That's just the pace that Mikey really loved. And so he did that for a few years, and we stayed in touch throughout this time. And I guess at one point in time, he was sort of looking for a change of pace and decided that he was going to come out west and visit some of us folks. He rode the Amtrak out, and I believe that Neil picked him up in Bingen there. So maybe I'll let you share something about that. And I'm sure helped out with the house and did things, because Mike was always there to lend a hand. It didn't matter whether it was working on your car or your home or working on the farm. Like, he offered his time no matter what it was, and he was very willing to do that as a friend always. And after that, he either hitchhiked or maybe rode a bus down to where I was living in Bend. And so we hung out down there for a little while, and he told me that he was kind of looking to maybe make a move and things, as was I at the time. And so we found him a job at a farm in Southern Oregon. It was a chapter that not a whole lot of people really are that aware of. It was the one that me and Mike worked at farms next to each other in a small town in Southern Oregon of like 800 people in a town called Oakland. And it was a whole lot like a lot of farm situations go that I'm sure several of y'all have experienced, that it wasn't always the prettiest thing. And there were tough situations at his farm and at my farm. And, you know, on top of that, I also had a relationship that was coming to nearing the end of it, and wasn't an easy situation either. And that's when I realized that it didn't matter what it was that came up in life, I could talk to Mike about it. And that Mike wasn't going to judge you, and you could literally talk to him about anything from work or relationships or plants or animals or aliens or everything in between. And Mike was going to listen to you, and he would hear you. And the things he offered came from this place of positivity that was always impressive and surprising, and just the way that he lived in the present moment at times, or in all times almost, has been impressive to me for so long. And the way that Mike never had a bad thing to say about anybody, even when I thought, Mike, you need to step up and say something to your boss down there, or you should do this. He would have this just like understanding approach to life that didn't allow him to say something bad about people or to really pass judgment on somebody. And I honestly have never met anybody in my life that really had that, you know. So it's a very unique thing that really I hope that I can take something away from, and just by talking about it, I hope that, you know, we all can share these stories and take something away from in that regard. And what at the tail end of that chapter, I wind up hightailing it back here to the gorge, you know, and getting back in touch with all you folks and my family and the whitewater community here. And of course, you know, Mike, come up here from Southern Oregon, check things out, see what you think of it. And he came up, and I was living with Wes Gilligan at the time. I don't know if he's out here, but Wes was like, "Oh, we got to get your bud Mike on the team. Like, he's a drifters guy, you know," and which is very true. You know, Mike fit in really well in the drifters community, and yeah, called him up, and it didn't take much convincing. He was up here a couple months after me in that experience, and that kind of led us to the present day, where all of you all got to know Mike so well and know so many stories about this such a colorful, kind, and genuine human that we all came here today for. And yeah, I really hope that we can all just share stories about Mike tonight, whether you come up here or whether they get told around a campfire, and we can let one story lead to the other and just keep the sense of what Mike brought to this world alive and let that live through us as much as we can, because he was a really special human, and I think we'll all really miss him. So, thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Now I'd like to invite Neil Mangrum up to speak.